Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The dining room erupted in applause when Nia Langford lifted her phone and announced the sale. Yvette Langford raised her wine glass like a referee calling a win. Vernon Langford nodded with the calm pride he saved for moments that proved him right. Kendra Langford leaned forward, already shaping the story into something she could repeat at every holiday. $40,000, Yvette said, setting her glass down with a satisfied clink. Nia let the sound land, then sat back, letting their approval wash over her shoulders. Darnell Price lifted his beer and whistled, sure she had saved the house. Nia told them the old Cadillac had sat in their garage for 3 years while Malcolm Redding spent Saturdays under its hood. She said boxes kept arriving, each one paid for with money that could have cleared a card balance or funded a trip. She repeated what she had said to Malcolm before. It was metal that never moved. Yvette agreed, calling it waste. Vernon said a marriage needed discipline, not weekend projects. Kendra said she had watched friends lose homes to hobbies. Nia kept her voice steady and claimed she had ended the problem with one sale. At last, she explained how she found the buyer through a classic car forum, posting photos and a short description. The response came fast, a message from a collector named Everett Sloan who offered cash and promised no hassle. He drove in from another state with a trailer and a cashier's check. Everett spent nearly an hour walking around the car, touching the paint, checking the trunk, and sliding a light under the frame. He kept saying he couldn't believe his luck, Nia told the table. She took that as proof she had negotiated well, not as a warning. Not even once. Malcolm was out of town for a work conference in Minneapolis, and Nia said she used the quiet window. She told herself it was easier to act first and explain later, because arguments had become routine whenever the car came up. She pictured credit card statements with smaller numbers and a vacation date on the calendar. At the table, she said, "He'll understand when he sees the money." Yvette squeezed her hand and told her not to waver. Vernon said a household needed one adult decision-maker. Nia nodded, letting their certainty become her shield. Did not mention Malcolm's face. By 9, plates were cleared and stories kept coming, each one about a husband who wasted time and money. Nia let them talk because the noise kept her from thinking. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, then answered and heard a man say, "This is Everett Sloan. I bought the Cadillac today." Nia stepped into the kitchen and shut the door. Everett sounded excited and strained at once. He asked whether Malcolm had done the restoration himself and where the parts came from. Nia said she didn't know, then asked why he cared. Everett paused. Then Everett said he needed to speak with Malcolm directly, not by message and not through her. He asked when Malcolm would be home. Nia told him Malcolm returned the next evening. Everett asked for 7 o'clock, saying he could drive back if they would meet. Nia said, "You're states away," and Everett answered, "I'll make it." His tone held a weight she could not name. She gave their address in Baltimore and ended the call. When she returned to the dining room, Yvette asked what happened. Nia said nothing, but her stomach had tightened. Watched her like she knew. Malcolm came home at 6:30 the next evening, rolling a small suitcase across the entry tile. Nia stood near the sink with a towel in her hands, waiting for the moment she had rehearsed. Malcolm set his briefcase down, loosened his tie, and glanced toward the door leading to the garage. His eyes stayed there longer than usual. His mouth opened, then closed. Finally, he said, "Where's the Cadillac?" The words were even, but the edge in them made Nia keep her distance. She said, "We need to talk," and tried to sound calm while her pulse rose. "Now," Nia said she sold it for $40,000. Malcolm stared, then set his suitcase down with care, as if careless movement could crack the air. He said, "You sold my grandfather's 1957 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham." Nia said it was falling apart and eating money. Malcolm did not raise his voice. He walked into the garage and stopped in the empty space where the car had sat. His hand stayed at his sides. When he turned back, disappointment covered his face, and Nia felt her prepared logic drain away. He asked, softly, if she had any idea what she touched. Malcolm said it was one of 700 built, and few still existed. He said this one carried original items and paperwork proving his grandfather bought it new in 1957. Nia tried to answer with a number, repeating that 40,000 was a lot. Malcolm said the engine alone could match that amount. He told her he had sent the V8 to a specialist in Michigan for a rebuild to original specifications. Then he said, "I talked about it every Saturday," and his voice sharpened on every word. Nia looked down at her hands and could not reply today. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. Nia said, "That's Everett," and Malcolm opened the door. Everett Sloan stood on the porch with an older man in a suit holding a leather portfolio. Everett introduced Leon Hastings, an appraiser known for rare Cadillacs. Everett said he needed to talk about what they had sold. Malcolm stepped aside and let them in. In the living room, Leon pulled out a tablet and swiped through photos Everett had taken during inspection. Nia recognized the car from every angle and felt her throat close. Leon asked Malcolm if he had restored it himself, alone. Malcolm said he had done the work over 3 years and kept records. Everett said he found binders in the trunk with receipts, photos, and authentication papers. Leon zoomed in on the engine photo and said it was the original 365 cubic inch V8, rebuilt correctly. He made notes, then asked if they understood what the car could bring at auction. Malcolm stayed quiet. Nia tried to speak and failed. Leon said the car could sell between 400,000 and 600,000 with the right venue and buyers. Nia gripped the sofa arm, and the room tilted again. Everett said he knew the listing price was below value, and he drove because he thought it was the chance of a lifetime. He admitted he took advantage of what the description revealed. The seller did not understand the car. Then he said he felt sick when he pulled away, so he called and brought Leon. Everett said he was prepared to pay fair market value. Leon suggested $425,000 for a private sale, though an auction might go higher. Everett said he could wire it today. Malcolm laughed once and said, "It's not about money anymore." Malcolm told Everett the Cadillac was the last thing his grandfather owned that felt close. He said the steering wheel hub carried his grandfather's initials. Malcolm said he replaced parts only when he had to, and he saved every original piece in label boxes at a storage unit. He said his grandfather bought the car in 1957 to celebrate the contract that made his business thrive. He said it was driven on special days, then left to him in a will because his grandfather trusted him to protect it. Nia listened, hearing details she had heard before but never kept. Malcolm asked Nia if she knew what was in the glove compartment. She shook her head. He said there were love letters his grandfather wrote during the Korean War, plus a service medal, a pocket watch, and the original sales receipt. Everett said he still had the personal items, untouched, locked in his safe, and he would bring them back. Leon said the sale stood because Everett bought in good faith. He added Everett was not required to return the car or pay beyond the agreed price. Nia heard the words good faith and felt them work against her today. Malcolm said the car was left to him alone in his grandfather's will, and Nia's name was not on the title. Nia blinked, realizing she had never checked. Leon said inherited property designated to one person is separate in many states. Malcolm said he understood contract law and also understood theft. Nia felt her lungs tighten. Her phone buzzed with Yvette's text. How did he take it? Stand firm. Nia remembered the applause and saw it now as a cheer for disaster. She put the phone down, and the living room felt smaller with each breath she took after that. The next morning, Everett returned with 2 briefcases. One case held the personal items, letters and folders, the medal, the pocket watch ticking, and the yellowed sales receipt. Malcolm handled each piece with shaking hands, eyes red from no sleep. The second case held wire transfer paperwork for $425,000. Nia watched Malcolm sign and felt no relief, only weight. Everett said he was paying because it was right, but he was keeping the car. He promised to preserve the restoration and send yearly photos proving care. Malcolm nodded once, and his voice came out hollow. After Everett left, Malcolm sat at the kitchen table with the letters and the medal laid out. He tied the ribbon and held the bundle to his chest. Nia said she was sorry and she did not know. Malcolm said that was the problem. She did not know because she never cared enough to learn. Nia said they could use the money wisely. Malcolm said, do not turn this into a tribute now. He said she sold the car to impress her family, and he said she never defended him when they mocked his work. His eyes stayed dry hard. Malcolm gathered the documents and said he would sleep in the guest room. Nia asked what that meant. Malcolm said he needed time to decide what came next, including whether he could stay married to someone who sold his inheritance. Nia asked if he would press charges. Malcolm said he did not know. Her phone buzzed with Yvette asking how they would invest the money. Nia typed, the car was worth much more. I ruined everything. Do not call, and sent it. Minutes later, calls flooded her screen. She powered the phone off. In the bedroom, she heard a suitcase unzip. 3 days later, Nia sat in Kendra's living room facing her family. Yvette said Malcolm tricked her by hiding the value, and Vernon said he should have explained better. Nia said he explained often, and she ignored him. She mentioned the video of his grandfather speaking about the car and admitted she had been on her phone. Kendra said no one could track every detail. Nia said it was not detail, it was legacy. She said 3 lawyers told her the title was his alone and she could face divorce with nothing or even theft charges. The room went quiet. Nia said Everett posted the restoration on a classic Cadillac forum, and collectors began calling Malcolm. Some asked for quotes, some asked if he would consult for museums. Yvette said at least Malcolm could profit from a mistake. Nia said he did not restore the car for profit, and the calls were recognition of dedication. Vernon asked what she would do now. Nia said she was going to try to repair her marriage, even if she failed. She grabbed her purse and said she was done letting them blame Malcolm for what she chose. Darnell avoided her eyes all evening. Nia found Malcolm at the storage unit where he kept the original parts. He sat on the floor between boxes labeled by date and component. He held a chrome front bumper under fluorescent light. Malcolm said the bumper had pitting that did not threaten strength, but he wanted the restored car perfect, so he replated it and used a reproduction on the car. He said he kept this piece because his grandfather's hands touched it. Nia sat a few feet away and apologized. Malcolm nodded once, without warmth, and kept staring. She asked to sit and listen quietly if allowed. Malcolm said the new calls did not change why he restored the car. He said he did it to stay close to his grandfather, and now the car was gone. Nia begged him not to give up on them. She promised to pay attention and learn what he values. Malcolm stayed quiet, then said he'd been thinking about his grandfather. He said the car was never the point, but you protect what you love and you do not ignore it. He pulled a small photo album from a box and said they could start with the pictures. With coffee. They left the storage unit separately and met at a coffee shop in Baltimore where they once had their first date. Nia carried the album. Malcolm opened it to the first page and waited. Nia saw the Cadillac as it had been, faded but intact, and said, "Tell me everything." Malcolm began with the day his grandfather handed him the keys and said why he felt trusted. Nia kept her phone face down. When it buzzed, she silenced it without looking. Malcolm noticed, and his shoulders lowered. He said he was not ready to come home, but he would talk. Over 3 hours, Nia listened as Malcolm named each step of the restoration and what it meant. He stated facts and memories, and she stayed present. When they closed the album, Nia asked what happened now. Malcolm said they would see if understanding could become healing, and if attention could become partnership. Nia said the car was gone. Malcolm said they could still build something that could not be sold if they chose it daily. They walked to their cars and drove home separately, Nia following his taillights through traffic. She knew her family would argue, and she would refuse. The next day, Malcolm texted from a hotel near the Inner Harbor and said he needed space. He said he would come by for clothes and mail, but he would not argue. Nia replied that she understood. She muted her family's group chat and left her phone on the counter while she cleaned in silence. When Malcolm arrived, he walked past her to the closet, packed, and carried a bag to the door. Nia asked if he would meet for coffee. Malcolm said yes, but only if she came to listen, not to negotiate. Nia agreed and let him leave. At their next coffee meeting, Malcolm laid out 3 rules. He said the sale money would stay in an account under his name for now. He said Nia's family would not be welcome around him, and he would not sit through jokes. He said any large purchase or sale would require both signatures and a written agreement. Nia nodded and wrote each rule in her notebook. She asked whether he had filed for divorce. Malcolm said he had met an attorney to understand his options, and he would not lie. Nia swallowed and thanked him. Hands shook under the table. That weekend, Nia drove to her parents' row house and set one boundary. She would not discuss Malcolm as a villain. Yvette called him dramatic and said the car was just a car. Vernon said Malcolm was controlling her with guilt. Nia said she was the one who controlled when she sold what she did not value. Kendra suggested Nia apologize and move on. Nia said she was apologizing, but she was also changing, and her family did not get a vote. Yvette called her ungrateful. Nia said she loved them, then walked out. In the car she cried, drove home. Malcolm's phone kept ringing with unknown numbers. He answered a few, listened, and wrote names on a legal pad. Within 2 weeks, he rented a small bay outside Towson for space, not a grand launch. He formed an LLC with an accountant and set strict hours. He accepted one project from a collector in Philadelphia who wanted a 1962 Fleetwood restored to factory condition. Malcolm did not post online or chase attention. Nia offered to handle invoices and scheduling from home. Malcolm agreed on one condition. She would not mention the work to her family. Nia said she would not. Nia did not try to buy forgiveness with gifts. She started small, asking Malcolm about his day and listening without steering. When he mentioned carburetors or wiring harnesses, she looked up the terms later and asked one question at coffee. After a month, Malcolm invited her to the shop for 30 minutes. Nia arrived on time, stood where he told her, and watched him measure a gap, mark tape, and adjust it by fractions. He did not perform. He worked. Nia saw his patience as character, not pastime. She drove home, cooked dinner, and left a plate in the fridge. Malcolm agreed to a session with a counselor in Annapolis, not as a promise, but as a test. He said trust broke when Nia treated his words as noise. The counselor asked Nia to repeat what Malcolm had told her about the Cadillac before she sold it. Nia could not. She admitted she had been on her phone, assuming it did not matter. Malcolm said he logged 2,147 hours on the restoration, and she spent 0 hours with him. Nia said she understood the numbers were about attention, not metal. Outside, she asked for another session. Malcolm said maybe. 2 months after the sale, a padded envelope arrived at Malcolm's hotel with Everett's return address. Inside were photos of the Cadillac in Everett's control garage, plus a maintenance log and a note promising it would not be flipped. Malcolm sat on the bed, looked, and turned the photos face down. Nia had come to meet him in the lobby. She watched his jaw tighten and asked if he wanted her to leave. Malcolm said no, then said seeing the car in another man's space felt like a family photo on a stranger's wall. Nia stayed quiet and stayed seated. Afterward, Malcolm said he would come home at night, but keep the hotel for now. He said the guest room would be his, and Nia would not enter without asking. Nia agreed and cleared the room that night. On the first night, Malcolm carried a toolbox and a laundry bag. He ate the dinner she left in the fridge, washed his plate, and closed the guest room door. Nia stayed in the living room, reading without focus, refusing to talk. At midnight, she heard the shower start and stop. She did not move. She turned off the lamp. Silence did the work. At work, Nia kept her smile in place, but her attention slipped. In meetings, she stopped herself from reaching for her phone. A coworker asked why she looked tired. Nia said she was dealing with a mistake she caused and left it there. She reviewed the budget and found ignored leaks, subscriptions, and fees. She canceled them quietly. She opened a checking account in her own name and set automatic transfers for bills Malcolm used to handle. When she paid something, she sent Malcolm a screenshot with no commentary. Malcolm replied with short acknowledgments. Nia accepted the distance. For now, Malcolm finished Fleetwood's first phase and sent the client photos with an invoice. Payment arrived by wire. Malcolm did not celebrate. He bought a used engine hoist-in, Glen Burnie, and replaced worn sockets. When he told Nia, it sounded like information, not a request. Nia asked whether he felt proud. Malcolm said he felt steady when his hands were busy, and that steadiness helped him sleep. Nia said she was glad and stopped there. That night, Malcolm left a note thanking her for handling invoices. Nia held the note like progress. He also wrote, "Do not share this." Early autumn, Yvette and Vernon showed up without calling, carrying a pie. Malcolm's truck sat in the driveway, and Nia panicked. She had not warned him. Yvette knocked and demanded to come in. Nia stepped outside and blocked the doorway. Yvette said Malcolm needed to stop acting like a child. Nia said they could not enter. Vernon said Malcolm was punishing her. Nia said Malcolm was protecting himself, and she would respect that. Yvette called Nia soft. Nia said, "Leave," and kept it level. They left with no apology. Malcolm said through the window, "Thank you." Nia nodded, knees shaking. That night, Malcolm sat on the back steps and said he had the option to file. Nia sat one step lower and kept her hands in her lap. Malcolm said he did not want to live in anger, but he could not ignore what she did. Nia said she understood. Malcolm asked what changed in her, because apologies were easy and patterns were not. Nia said the appraisal shattered denial, but the real break came when she saw his face in the garage. Malcolm said he heard her and was still hurt. They stayed there until the porch light clicked off. A week later, Malcolm got a call from a museum curator in Washington, D.C., asking him to speak about his work. Malcolm declined, saying he did not want public attention. He accepted a private consultation, an hour about sourcing period-correct parts. That evening, he invited Nia to the shop and handed her a rag and polish. He told her to work on a small trim piece and stop when her arm was tired. Nia worked slowly and watched the metal change. Malcolm corrected her grip once, without irritation. Nia thanked him. Malcolm nodded and returned to his bench. Quietly. One Monday, Nia found a voicemail from Yvette that ended in blame. Yvette said Malcolm was humiliating her and told Nia to stop crawling. Nia listened once, then deleted it. She texted, "Do not come to my house or call Malcolm. If you want to talk to me, ask first." Yvette replied that Nia was brainwashed and that family came before husbands. Nia did not answer. After work, she drove to the shop to keep her promise. Malcolm was under a dashboard. Nia sat on a stool and waited. When he slid out, she said hello. He said hello back. In November, Malcolm asked Nia to meet at a law office in Hunt Valley. He said he wanted an agreement to protect inherited property and set rules. The attorney explained the Cadillac had been separate property and the sale created exposure. Malcolm said he was not there to shame her, only to set guardrails. The document required joint consent for asset sales, listed inherited items as separate, and kept shop income under Malcolm's control. Nia read every line and signed. Malcolm signed and said, "This is what it takes for me to breathe." Nia said, "Then we do it today." As Thanksgiving approached, Nia's family sent invitations as if nothing had happened. Nia showed the messages to Malcolm. Malcolm said he would not go, and he would not sit where his grief was treated like drama. Nia said she would not go either. They stayed home, cooked, and ate at the kitchen table. Malcolm shared a memory about his grandfather carving turkey with a pocket knife that was never sharp enough. Nia asked what the knife looked like and listened. After dinner, Malcolm washed dishes and Nia dried. Their hands did not touch, but they worked in the same space. In early December, Malcolm moved back into the guest room and ended the hotel lease. He did not announce it. He carried his last bag inside and set it by the door. Nia nodded and returned to folding towels. That night, he left the guest room door open while he read shop invoices at the kitchen table. Nia placed a mug of tea on the hall shelf and walked away. At breakfast, he said the shop had a new client, a man in Newark with a 1959 coupe. Nia asked the start date and wrote it down for scheduling quietly. That Saturday, Nia drove with Malcolm to the shop, parked, and waited by the office door until he waved her in. He handed her receipts and said, "File these by month." She did it without questions. A man named Tobias Green arrived with the newer car on a flatbed and shook Malcolm's hand. Tobias said the coupe belonged to his late father and should look the way it did in family photos. Malcolm asked for the history file and the title copy. Nia watched Malcolm take notes, calm and exact, and felt her breathing slow, as if time obeyed. On Monday, Yvette sent a long email with the subject line, "Fix this." She listed reasons Malcolm should apologize, then suggested how to invest the wire money. Nia read it once, forwarded it to herself for the record, and replied with one sentence, "Do not contact us again about Malcolm or the sale." Yvette answered within minutes, demanding respect. Nia did not respond. That evening, Malcolm noticed the email on the printer. Nia tore it in half, dropped it in the trash, and said, "It ends here." Malcolm watched her hands, nodded once, and returned to work. A week later, Malcolm placed a small metal key on the kitchen counter and slid it toward Nia. He said it opened the shop's office file cabinet. Nia looked at it, then at him. Malcolm said he was tired of guarding everything like a storm shelter. He asked her to scan the restoration photos stored on old drives so they would not be lost. Nia said she could do it after work. Malcolm nodded. He did not smile, but he sat at the table while she wrote a checklist, and he corrected 2 file names. No speeches, just tasks. Nia spent 3 evenings scanning photos and labeling folders with dates Malcolm had written on the backs. One image showed Malcolm at 16 beside the Cadillac, hand on the fender, his grandfather in a wool coat. Nia printed it, framed it, and placed it on the shelf outside the guest room. At dawn, Malcolm paused, stared, and said, "That was the day after the funeral." Nia nodded. Malcolm added, "He told me the leather still held his aftershave." Nia said, "I believe you." They drank coffee in silence, then worked. Malcolm looked away, then said, "Thank you," and kept going. In January, they returned to counseling in Annapolis. Malcolm said he wanted a plan, not hope. The counselor asked for one action that could be verified. Malcolm said he would share his schedule and eat dinner at the table 2 nights weekly. Nia said she would handle shop paperwork on Tuesdays and Fridays and ask one question, then listen. Malcolm agreed. The counselor wrote the commitments and asked what happens if one breaks. Malcolm said the plan pauses and they meet. Nia said she accepts that. Outside, Malcolm handed her a calendar printout. She folded it, said, "I will follow." On the first Tuesday, Malcolm arrived home at 7, washed his hands, and sat at the kitchen table without the usual distance. Nia set 2 plates down and kept her voice level. Malcolm ate, then asked for the mail. Nia handed it over and watched him open a letter from the attorney's office. He read it, placed it face down, and said, "No filing this week." Nia did not thank him. She said, "Noted," the way she might in a meeting. Malcolm nodded once and asked for the invoice list. Nia slid it over for his review. Friday at the shop, Nia asked her one question and stopped. She pointed to a bin of fasteners and said, "Why keep bolts if you replace them?" Malcolm said the factory stamps identify year and run, and collectors want proof, not guesses. Nia nodded and stayed silent. Tobias Green arrived and asked about his 1959 coupe. Malcolm showed the clean carburetor and a list of parts still needed. Tobias said his father would have liked Malcolm's care. Malcolm answered, "I worked the way I was taught." Nia filed the estimate. Late January, Vernon came to the shop during business hours and asked for Malcolm. Nia met him at the counter and said Malcolm was working and would not be interrupted. Vernon asked about the wire money and said the family deserved a plan. Nia said the money was not his concern and the shop was not a meeting room. Vernon raised his voice and clients stared. Nia said, "Leave," and held the door open. Vernon called her disloyal and walked out still talking. Nia locked the door and wrote the time in the incident log. That night, Malcolm sat in the living room and asked what happened at the shop. Nia stated the facts and stopped. Malcolm read the incident note, then set it down. He said, "You did what I needed you to do years ago." Nia nodded. Malcolm asked if she had blocked their numbers. Nia said she would, starting tonight. Malcolm said, "Do it." Then he asked a question. Did she want to stay married even if he never forgave the sale? Nia said yes. Malcolm said he could not promise forgiveness, but he could listen. He promised only truth daily. Nia blocked Yvette, Vernon, and Kendra before bed and saved screenshots of the last messages. In the morning, she told Malcolm it was done. Malcolm nodded and left for the shop early. At lunch, he texted a photo of a cleared workbench and wrote, "First engine out." Nia replied, "Logged." That evening, he came home with a small envelope and slid it across the counter. Inside was a hotel key card cut in half. Malcolm said he was done paying for distance. Nia dropped the pieces in the trash and washed her hands. Malcolm watched, then said, "Thank you," quietly. By February, Malcolm's calendar filled with quiet work. Estimates, parts orders, careful rebuilds. He did not chase attention, and he did not accept every job. He took 3 restorations and declined 5, choosing cars with histories he could respect. He hired a part-time bookkeeper named Deja Norton to cover hours Nia could not. Nia trained Deja on the filing system and stepped back without complaint. One evening, Malcolm brought home a new shop notebook and wrote a line. Nia handled the books. Accurate. It was not public praise. It was a private record. Nia read it and nodded. On Friday, Malcolm asked Nia to meet him at the storage unit after closing. He unlocked the door, switched on the light, and pointed to boxes from the Cadillac. Then he handed her the photo album and said, "Keep this at home." Nia held it carefully. Malcolm said he did not want their history stored like contraband. He said he was not ready to forget, but he was ready to stop living as if every day required punishment. Nia said, "I will not waste this." Malcolm nodded and locked the unit without looking back. They drove home silently. In March, Malcolm carried a pillow into the main bedroom and said, "I want to sleep here again." Nia nodded and cleared his side. That weekend, he sealed the attorney paperwork in an envelope, wrote a date on it, and placed it in the safe. He said he would reopen it only if the rules were broken. Nia said she understood. On Monday, an email from Yvette appeared in Nia's blocked folder, still blaming Malcolm and demanding access to the money. Nia deleted it. Malcolm watched the screen and said, "That is choosing." No applause followed, only calm. At month's end, Everett mailed a new photo of the Cadillac under lights with a note. Maintained. Driven once. Stored dry. Malcolm read it, then set it beside the framed funeral day picture. He stayed quiet. Then he said he would have wanted me to keep building, not staring at loss. Nia said, "Then build." Malcolm picked up his shop keys and asked if she was coming. Nia grabbed her coat. Outside, Malcolm reached for her hand, and she did not flinch. They left together, held by a tension that finally stayed. Nobody else got a say. If this hits you, watch what happens when disrespect meets consequences in the next story. Tap the next video on your screen and drop a comment. What was the real price here? $425,000 or something else? Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The end.